I'm Aidan Connolly, Executive Director of Irish Arts Center in New York City. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a white male with dark hair and a beard, wearing a dark blue short-sleeved shirt. It is really a pleasure to be with you all today. Allow me, if I may, to take you back to August of 2010, to the cascading mill streams of Woodstock, New York, where I gathered our team of then 5 people for a summer retreat. I was 3 years into my tenure at Irish Arts Center and an ambitious turnaround project to transform what was a small grassroots off-Broadway producing theater in a crumbling 3-story Hell's Kitchen tenement to a first-rate multidisciplinary platform for contemporary Irish arts, and to develop and construct a new building to support that mission. One that might proudly join the city's dynamic assembly of culturally specific arts institutions like Asia Society, Alliance Francaise, America Society, Scandinavia House, and others. Jumping off of Irishness, but not bounded by it. Reflective of Ireland as the modern, more diverse European country it is today. With a program that was like an intimately scaled hybrid of the 92nd Street Y and BAM, both grassroots and internationalist, authentic, inclusive, and contemporary, with the roots of Ireland's great artistic legacy as a land of poets and innovators and scholars. And as we gathered that day in Woodstock, I had also just started the executive MBA program at Wharton, which is to say, I was really insufferable. I was so eager to share all my learnings, which is to say, I was chock-a-block with irritating B-school jargon. Like this. We have to build an impenetrable moat around our differentiated offering to avoid imitation by our competitors. I even had them read Michael Porter's seminal article on strategy, which is really brilliant. You should all read it. But come on, it's August. Like I said, pretty insufferable. But that said, actually, everyone was pretty down with the idea of exploring a strategic framework that August day, which was drawn from Jim Collins' Good to Great. There's that book again. It's called the Hedgehog concept. And what we learned surprised us. You see, the Hedgehog concept asks you to explore 3 questions. What can we be best in the world at? What drives our economic engine, and what animates the passions of our people? And it suggests that the overlapping answers to those 3 questions is where your hedgehog concept resides, and where you should put your relentless focus, like a hedgehog, instead of running around all over the place at every opportunity, like a fox. Now, to that point in our history, to the extent Irish Arts Center was known, it was for scrappy, locally produced, off-Broadway theater, delivered in our 99-seat venue in the back of that Hell's Kitchen tenement. It had dodgy sight lines and a shoestring budget, but there was a lot of heart, good people, and a great history. That's a shot of the late Malachi and Frank McCourt, performed there in the 1980s. Long before Frank would go on to win a Pulitzer Prize for Angela's Ashes. We'd also learned that we could create a more compelling, consistent offering by presenting rather than producing. By going to Ireland and finding the most innovative contemporary theater artists working on an intimate scale and presenting that work as a unique offering for New York audiences. A really, really specific niche. But back to the hedgehog concept, any reasonable analysis would suggest that in such a competitive, saturated market as New York, we couldn't credibly say we were going to be best in the world at theater producing or even presenting. And at 99 seats, with rising costs and a really thin budget, we just weren't going to ignite our economic engine on that path alone. So we would need to build out an eclectic artistic program with multiple interest inputs across a range of disciplines: music and dance, as well as theater, literature, humanities, visual arts, and education. We called it multidisciplinary with discipline, where we carefully identified our value add across each artistic form. For theater, it was presenting on an intimate scale. For music, it was residencies and collaborations. For dance, it was commissions, and on and on. And through the development of that multidisciplinary program, we would build out a broader organizational ecosystem, which included funders and media and opinion leaders, organizational allies and connectors, animated by their passion for the work, with artists squarely in the center of that ecosystem. But as we explored our hedgehog concept that afternoon, it still wasn't totally clear. What was that one unifying concept that could serve as an organizing ethos for the entire enterprise and keep us focused and aligned? What could we be best in the world at that drove our economic engine and fueled our passions? And then someone half-jokingly said, well, we're Irish. We're really good at throwing parties.
We're good at parties.
Yeah, we laughed. And then we said, wait a minute. Actually, we did feel like we had a talent for creating great, meaningful human experiences around the art. And of course, Ireland is known as the land of 100,000 welcomes. There's even an Irish phrase for it. Céad Míle Fáilte. We're getting pretty great at leveraging those hospitality experiences for fundraising. Everyone on the retreat really connected to the concept of hospitality on a human level. It absolutely ignited our passions. And so from that day forward, the concept of creating an environment of warm Irish hospitality around everything we do became a core value. It crystallized our focus. Irish Arts Center was about New York standards of excellence on an intimate scale in an environment of warm Irish hospitality. Now, we weren't ever going to diminish the art, of course. To the contrary, we were going to fuel it through our ability to drive fundraising animated by Irish hospitality as well. And so we did. It drove our cultivation by forging personal connections between our artists and our supporters through meaningful post-show engagements. Our gala fundraisers started to feel a little bit like an Irish version of the Golden Globes. It also drove the design of our new building. In hundreds of interviews with stakeholder ecologies around what activities and thus spaces were needed for a new Irish Art Center for the 21st century, beyond all the technical requirements, having a place to gather and talk and share ideas and build friendships became a constant refrain. The economic outcomes followed. We grew our annual fund by an average annual rate of 14% over 14 years, more than 5 times the growth of the US economy during that time. Over 10 years, we raised $66 million to fund the building with no debt and a cash reserve. But what we came to realize was that ethos of hospitality wasn't just about our funders. It was about the whole ecosystem, and it was completely centered on artists. We began to call it radical hospitality. Because when we focus on creating an environment of warm hospitality for the artist, from the first email with artist services to the closing night toast and beyond, that spirit of loyalty and even love, it radiates out from our artists through the whole ecosystem, to our funders, to our audiences, to our stakeholders, to our staff and volunteers, everybody. It's a contagion of loyalty. Here's a clip from a residency with Liam O'Mwaley and Cassandra Wilson.
I felt as if I knew you. I said to myself, you're weird like me.
But it was, yeah. It was a mirrored kind of thing. We're two people trusting each other's instinct about something. And we're sharing our lives, and we're talking a bit about everything, cultural and personal, and this other incredible entity, the Irish Arts Centre, being something that we dream of as artists.
There's so much warmth in the room, and there's so much, it just uplifts you. He's an angel of the first degree.
That concept of radical hospitality would become even more important at a time of crisis, as the pandemic arrived 18 months into that construction. At a time when we couldn't predict outcomes, how long would construction be halted? How much would those costs of delay be? When would there be a vaccine? Would we be okay? We could still commit ourselves to that core value of hospitality, prioritizing the health and safety of our construction workers and our staff and our people, talking openly and honestly to our audiences and our funders and our stakeholders, checking in on our artists and freelancers, providing them and our audiences with digital work that would sustain them through a project we called Grasta, which is Irish for grace. We commissioned these artistic works inspired by the theme of finding grace in times of uncertainty. During those trying times and reckonings, we'd also come to recognize through organizational development work that the spirit of radical hospitality also needed to apply to us as staff in ways we had maybe neglected. How were we working together? How were we treating each other as colleagues? Were we creating an environment of hospitality for our staff the way we say we wanted to do with artists? Probably not always. We realized we also needed to build our internal culture to align with that core value of hospitality. Now, as we all know, this is maybe the hardest application of all, but we can aspire to it with active steps, with trust, with training, with transparency, by building group norms and an environment where everybody feels like they can be their authentic self when they show up to work, no matter what their background, no matter where they come from, just as we do for artists. Now, I wouldn't want to suggest we've succeeded in this yet. It's an ongoing aspiration, but we did get it off to a pretty dramatic start. As a gesture of thanks for our team's heroic work during the pandemic, our board personally underwrote a summer staff retreat a little further afield than Woodstock, New York, in the west of Ireland at the Galway International Arts Festival. Everyone on our team, which had grown to more than 20 at that point, programmers, administrators, techies, fundraisers alike, watched shows, hung out with artists, built relationships, kept the residence bar entertained with songs and stories until the wee hours of the morning. It cost us about 60 grand, but it was worth every penny. Now, it's tempting to suggest that with radical hospitality, we found that powerful point of differentiation, that we built that moat around our strategic position. And I do think it's driven our competitive advantage as we baked it into the new building and as we build it into the culture every day. But the reality is that the concept of hospitality isn't radical at all. In fact, it's as old as the gods. It isn't even particularly Irish, at least originally. We got it from the Greeks. In ancient Greece, the idea of hospitality was called xenos, or xenia, and it was the underpinning of a civil society. It was not only nice to be welcoming, it was an absolute mandate from the gods. Failing to welcome the stranger was the greatest sin one could commit. There are parallel concepts in Eastern philosophy. We welcome the stranger because we are all part of one universal whole. And so a whimsical little insight from our staff gathering in Woodstock absolutely changed our world. It's still an aspiration. As Samuel Beckett might say, we fail better at it every day. But I offer it to you today as we reflect on our best in the world capabilities, our economic engines, and the passions of our people. May we bring the spirit of radical hospitality to its ever life-affirming potential as we work together through arts and culture to elevate humanity. Thank you very much.